And finally, John Meissner is the managing director at MXV Ventures, a hybrid venture firm that seeks to raise funding from both public and private sources in helping innovators get their ideas out into the world. Their clients are entrepreneurs, scientists, startups, and research organizations, basically anyone focused on solving interesting and challenging problems in the renewable energy and sustainability space. Prior to MXV, John was an entrepreneur, advisor, and commercialization partner who has designed, launched, and managed $200 million+ in climate tech initiatives for research organizations, government agencies, and nonprofits. Most recently, John co-founded a new climate tech incubator called Lab Start to match entrepreneurs with innovations being developed at the US National Labs. He's also a consultant to the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, where he develops industry partnerships and helps commercialize lab innovations. John, the floor is yours. Please share your presentation and tell us about MXV Ventures.
Well, first off, thank you, Lori, for the introduction, and thank you, Stanford, US-ATMC, and everybody else for being here and joining this fantastic panel. So I'll begin. Good evening, everybody. As Lori mentioned, my name is John Meissner. I am the managing director at MXV Ventures. The original title of my talk was a love story, but this is a more straightforward and slightly less dramatic way to go about things here. So either way, I'm here to talk about the hybrid approach to impact investing for climate tech, where we leverage both public and private funds. So I'd like to start off with a little background about me. This quote has more or less been my own personal rallying cry since I was in college. At some point, while working in a materials science lab at UC San Diego, I had an aha moment, like you do when you're in college. I realized that I could combine my love of science and technology with the business of getting great ideas out into the world. And even better, I eventually came to realize if those ideas can make a real and lasting positive change. So since then, I've basically been chasing this sentiment, which I'll read now. What's more exciting than a talented, driven entrepreneur back against the wall, peering out over a giant chasm, their only map emblazoned with "Here be dragons about to embark"? Now, this is really the essence of what's drawn me to impact investing. There are a ton of ways to contribute to making a positive change, but I want to make this change by getting brilliant new ideas and technology out into the world. I've also gotten to a point in my career where I think I can do more good by helping a bunch of other people make their breakthroughs a reality as opposed to just chasing one of my own. More on that later, but for now, I would just like to convey that the whole point of impact investing, as we've kind of heard already a little bit here, is to make a real and lasting positive change, in this case, by funneling money to talented entrepreneurs with great ideas. Now, as I've already mentioned and alluded to here, my corner of the impact universe is focused on fighting climate change. And as we all know, our planet is a bit of a hot mess right now. For example, atmospheric CO2 levels are at their highest in 650,000 years, and 19 of the 20 warmest years on record have occurred since 2001. Bay Area residents, of which I assume there are plenty on this webinar, can recall waking up to orange skies from wildfires just last year. And these fires are getting more and more common. Fire season is a thing now. And I'll keep that part brief. I'm sure you've all seen plenty of climate change images and infographics. I love this GIF, by the way. We've all kind of been there, right, in our lives. But anyway, the point is that clearly the fight against climate change is a global scale problem that requires global scale solutions and a ton of innovation. This is a great place for impact investing to play a part. And as I'll be discussing, it's also a great place for public funding to play a part as well. So I've only recently started my own impact investing journey, a journey which, to be honest, has been a bit of a roller coaster to get to this point. Starting way back here, after grad school, I worked at a management consulting firm in Chicago to start adding some business chops to my engineering and science background and materials lab work I'd been doing. And then I followed that up by co-founding a SaaS startup in Washington, D.C. that didn't quite make it past the 2008 market crash. That was really a blessing in disguise, though, looking back, because next I went to work as a contractor at the US Department of Energy. There, I was helping come up with ways to use tax dollars to reduce the cost of wind energy by investing in early stage technologies in wind. And that was really when I realized the potential for public funding to power private innovation. Shown here is the wind research facility at the National Renewable Energy Lab, or NREL, out in Boulder, Colorado. This is a great example of something that the government's funded that industry has been leveraging for many decades now. So industries uses this facility, a DOE-funded facility, to drive down the cost of wind energy, which is well below that of coal now. And this downward march in wind energy costs continues to this day. So after my stint at DOE, I moved to Denver. So I start going out west. And I worked on a few different entrepreneurial projects while out there, some of which totally flamed out. I'll spare you the gory details, but that ultimately led me to a few different consulting projects with NREL, where I spent most of my time thinking about ways to improve how they get lab technologies to market. That eventually led me further west, out to Oakland, California, where I am now, and where I launched MXV Ventures a few years ago with my business partners from a consulting firm called Momentum. Very soon after that, we brought Andrew Bray onto the team, and we were off to the races. So together, we wanted to combine my experience and passion for working with early stage climate tech innovators with Momentum's decades plus experience helping climate tech companies grow and scale. More on that here briefly. Momentum has actually helped climate tech clients win over $1 billion in public funding in the decade plus they've been around. So the goal of our collaboration, again, is to help as many climate startups get off the ground and succeed as possible, while also providing for upside if we succeed. Kind of on this journey to figure out how we can do that, we explored several models, including, for example, consulting for equity, none of which really scale very well since we weren't sitting on a pile of cash, sadly. We knew, though, that we did want to build off of our public funding experience, and here are just a few examples. We'll get into some of the details here real quick for you. So the first one here, Momentum helped this electric drivetrain startup called Efficient Drivetrains, or EDI for short, raise $4 million in public funding for technology demonstrations. And as my partner, Sean Garvey, loves to point out, beyond the money, this is a fantastic example of how a government grant can lead to a partnership. So in this case, EDI actually brought Cummins on as a project partner for their grants, and then Cummins ultimately acquired them. Another recent example is the $2 million that MXV helped Packetize Energy win from the California Energy Commission. So Packetize enables smart appliances in the home. They act as a virtual power plant. Their system responds to changes in energy demand in real time. And this award has enabled them to launch a critical pilot project that will allow them to validate an innovative new business model that we're hoping will unlock new markets for them and help de-risk further private investment. And finally, a third example here, longtime Momentum client Energia, a resource recovery and renewable fuel startup, actually just went public this month. So great timing for this presentation. Momentum helped them raise $29 million in public funding to de-risk their technology and pilot projects and that kind of a thing. And this goes all the way back to when Energia was just two founders with an idea. Since then, they've become a leader in their field, and they've returned significant value to their shareholders. So not surprisingly, as you've seen from just these few examples, non-dilutive public funding matters a lot. It acts as a value-preserving bridge, providing time and money to validate technology, develop IP, and overcome climate tech-specific issues. And some of those are things like the long sales cycles in climate tech, regulatory requirements, and shifting policy. So all of this was kind of leading us as we were trying to come up with our thesis for what to do next. How do we leverage this powerful tool that we have a background in for our larger mission here? Well, about a year ago, all of this led to another aha moment for me and the team. And this is certainly a cool 20 years after my first personal aha moment back in college, and I really can't believe it's been that long. But anyway, it became glaringly obvious the best thing to do was to launch an investment fund. We didn't necessarily say impact investment fund, but because we're all in climate, that's more or less what we meant by that. But this would provide us with the bandwidth and resources to look far and wide to identify the most promising climate tech startups that we could find and not limit ourselves so much to just the small pool we were able to interface with to that point. So And this is the key part. Our unique value proposition for this investment fund is a commitment to match each dollar of private investment into our fund with a dollar of public funding. And considering there's over $900 million of federal and state funds available each year, and this number is likely going to increase with the administration change, we see this as quite achievable given our track records. And this combination of public and private funding can amplify value and impact and have significant downstream positive impacts for the startups that we work with. So with our fund thesis in place, which received rave reviews when we did our initial investor discovery interviews, our next move was to partner with the experienced investment team at Impact Venture Capital, who approached us about carving out a climate tech vertical in their $100 million fund too. They just recently started raising this. So this is actually a really great collaboration for us. This is our first fund. So we bring the climate tech and public funding expertise, and they bring the fund management experience and investment track record. Plus, Impact VC's general partners go back years with momentum. So there's already a strong working relationship there. And together we'll be identifying and investing in early stage startups that can make a positive climate impact. And from there, we will help each portfolio company raise as much public funding as they need to succeed. It's also definitely worth noting that in parallel to this, and Lori mentioned this during my bio, we've been developing a novel way to increase the pipeline of innovative ideas coming out of these 17 US national laboratories. For those of you not familiar, those are laboratories like Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, Lawrence Livermore, the National Renewable Energy Lab, which we mentioned earlier. There's 17 of them in total across the US, and they receive about $12 billion in government funding each year. So it's tax dollars, right? And these are really the jewel of the US innovation system that's taxpayer funded. So we co-developed this LabStart incubator with our colleague Rochelle Ely at NREL to unlock the innovations coming out of these labs. And we think this is critical to get more great ideas about fighting climate change out into the world. So build the pipeline, that's kind of our idea there. And we launched we bootstrapped a proof of concept last year actually to kind of show out how this thing can work, and we were very successful. And we just this month launched a nonprofit version of LabStart that we can set up as a public-private partnership with the laboratories and the Department of Energy. And the whole goal of LabStart is to spin out more startups from the national labs. So in summary, now is definitely the time to invest in climate tech. As we'll talk about, I think, on the panel here a little bit, it's not just an impact category anymore, but a legitimate investment category that's generating unicorns and attracting a flood of capital. Who's going to be the next Tesla or Impossible Foods or Nest or Sunrun? We aren't quite sure yet, but it's pretty safe to assume they're going to need a ton of non-dilutive public funding on their way to an exit. So in closing, I would like to quickly acknowledge my amazing team. Definitely would not be here without the folks here on this page. And I would like to thank you, the attendees, for your time and attention. And I believe now it's time for the panel. Thank you.